Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm here with my object of focus. I've got my candle lit. I'm ready for this seance.
Well, I'm going to say I'm even more on brand than you are because we are doing our second movie that was produced during quarantine, and I got COVID just for the occasion. I wanted to make it...
You, asked the universe for it, and the universe provided.
Yep. I wanted to make it as authentic an experience as possible. So I have COVID, and we are doing this remotely. I thought about maybe seeing if we wanted to actually do it on video, just to be extra on brand. But I'm in no condition to be on for anyone to see what I look like currently. So.
Yeah, that would probably be pushing the theme a little too far.
Yeah, I think so. But what are we talking about today? We're talking about the movie Host from 2020. It's number 34 on our list. This is a movie from 2020. It's number 34 on the list. This movie is less than an hour long. And it shot right to the top. And one of the reasons why I think this is a first for us, Amanda, it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Which has to be...
That's really interesting.
I assume the reason it's not higher must be due to the number of reviews or something, because it has 100%, and then everything that's higher than it has less than 100%. So I can only... Is there anything else that has 100%? This might be...
Yeah, wow.
No, there's one, two... 3. Oh, Frankenstein from 1931 has 100%.
Aww.
And only 2 other movies, Creep 2, which I'm not familiar with, and His House from 2020.
Huh.
Interesting. Well, we'll get to those eventually.
Yeah, someday.
But yes, we are covering Host, the found footage, if you can call it that, horror movie that was a Shudder original. Had you seen this before watching it this time?
No, I had not, because I remember when you first saw it and you immediately were like, if this is not on our list, I'm picking it as a wild card. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, knowing that, I can wait for this to come into my life, because I knew it was going to sooner rather than later. Yeah,
I watched this the way everyone should watch this, which is that is to say, it still worked this time. But the first time that I watched it was late at night by myself, very dark home, right after it came out. So right when all of the COVID stuff was still very much on everybody's mind and still in full swing. Zoom meetings were the norm. Yes. And scared the shit out of me, man.
I mean, I will say, before we get into it worked on me sitting in my bedroom on a random evening as the sun set. It wasn't even full dark when we started it. Yeah. And I still was like, ooh. Yeah,
it's really interesting.
Creeped out.
One of the things that I think will be fun to talk about is how it is a movie made for the streaming age that is best viewed via a streaming platform. Because it just, there are movies that are made for the big screen, movies that are made for TV, and now I think that there are movies that are made for lower fidelity, smaller screens, and that really enhances the experience, and I think this is definitely one of them.
Absolutely.
But we are going to take a quick break. We'll play you the trailer, and then we will come back and talk about Host.
Hey.
Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Radina.
Caroline.
Hi, Teddy.
Let's do a shot after us.
Okay, everyone get in. 3, 2, 1.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
I've never done this over Zoom. Obviously, we're not physically together, but there's no reason why Spirit can't communicate over the internet.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Visualize us sitting in a circle. Spirit, we invite you to use us to pass on any communication. Is there anyone there? Please come forth.
What was that? Amy, was that you?
I heard it.
I heard something.
I think there's something here.
Do you see that?
Oh,
Emma,
no.
that's funny. I heard something.
Yeah, we've connected with something. We gotta keep going. We gotta talk to it.
This is not good. I told you not to disrespect the spirits. It could be something demonic.
Hey, this is all your fault! Not my fault! This is your fault! Emma, turn the filters off. Come on.
All right, Host from 2020. Directed by Rob Savage, written by Gemma Hurley, Rob Savage, and Jed Shepard, starring Haley Bishop, Jemma Moore, Emma Louise Webb, Radina Drandova, Caroline Ward, Edward Leonard, Salen Baxter, and James Swanton as Jack, the rowdy ghost.
Oh.
Amanda, what happens in Host?
6 friends accidentally invite the attention of a demonic presence during an online séance and begin noticing strange occurrences in their homes.
Yes, I would say that is true. That last part is underselling it a hair, but yes.
I appreciate the undersell rather than the oversell. I feel
That's
like
true, yeah.
Yeah, so many of these summaries we get to, and then I'm just like, well, that blew the whole thing. Well, Clay, some things you'll find in Host include an awkward dad cameo.
By Caroline's actual father. So that's fun.
I love that. I love that so much.
Because this was...
I don't know...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know about you, but I definitely more than once had an accidental cameo of someone else in my household during COVID on a Zoom.
The only one I can think of, I didn't really do Zoom. Caitlin did a lot more Zoom stuff than I did. She was doing work stuff. The only time that she ended up on camera, I don't even know if it was during COVID. Anyway, it probably was during one of our Star Trek podcasts where she didn't realize we were on video.
Yes.
And so she was moving around very quietly in the background. And then at a certain point in the show, she just kind of like fades from view like a ghost. But she was being very conscientious to try to move like a ninja to be quiet behind us, not realizing she was actually on camera.
I love the idea of her just tiptoeing around behind you like Snidely Whiplash. That's that's my favorite. Clay, you'll also find a trans-dimensional drinking game.
Yes. Arguably the catalyst for Jack the Ghost's angerness, because they were not taking this seriously at all, and he really showed them.
Yeah, he set them straight. Maintaining COVID safety procedures even in the midst of a demonic attack.
I did really appreciate that when Jemma leaves to go to Haley's house.
She puts a mask on.
She puts a mask on, and then once they end up meeting each other in the house, they touch elbows. They don't actually hug.
Oh, really? I missed that part.
Yeah.
And you'll also find a boyfriend who takes hanging around way too literally.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of this is when he comes crashing down from the ceiling, because it's you kind of completely forget about him, and then they literally drop him on you, and it works very, very well.
I really loved that because I think it worked it like perfectly as intended on me, where I caught a glimpse of, I think it was his legs.
Yes, yeah.
like very briefly at some point when they're showing all like 5 or 6 of the different windows in the Zoom call all at once. So your attention's kind of split. And I definitely saw his legs in the background, and I don't think fully registered what they were, just that I saw something. And so then when he gets dropped from the ceiling, I was like, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah. Well, this is as I said, it's our second movie that was produced during the pandemic. The last one being In the Earth, and this one is a lot more directly referencing everything. I think, if I had to guess, I think In the Earth is was probably shot much later into the pandemic than this was. I think this was shot fairly early on. Because I remember this coming out like a couple months into everything. It didn't seem like it was that long.
Yeah, I think In the Earth was kind of conceived of and like executed in maybe the very, like towards like mid 2020 into like the very beginning of 2021, because it came out in 2021.
Oh, you know what? Actually, it's not that far off, actually. Host, it says the UK release for Host was December 4th, 2020. I could have sworn it was earlier than that. But it says In the Earth was January 29th, 2021. So they're only about a month apart. That's interesting. That seems really strange to me, because I could have sworn that this was earlier than that.
Well, didn't this come about because like the director who made it, didn't he do like a shorter version of it first?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did it as a kind of a joke that he played on his friends.
Oh, fun. I would murder a friend who did that to me.
Yeah, it says the film has its basis in a short film created by director Rob Savage in early 2020. The short featured Savage investigating strange sounds in his attic while on a group video chat with others. It was initially intended as a prank, as the others were unaware that a frightening visage would pop up on camera, and Savage placed the video online, where it went viral. Savage found the format easy to watch and chose to apply it to a feature-length film. He has stated that the short's success enabled him to create Host after producers contacted him upon seeing the viral video about making a longer film. So this is obviously different than In the Earth, because this is, like I said, much more directly tied to the events that were currently happening at the time. How do you feel about each of these approaches? Like, how do you feel about a movie like this that is directly tied to everybody's shared experience versus something that is just trying to make a movie under the circumstances without really directly referencing them?
You know, I think it's interesting because I think both of these movies are dealing in their different ways with the pandemic and the effects the pandemic could or did or has or is having on people. This one, Host, to me feels both more directly relatable, because I think, you know, you and I and many other people had that experience of sort of everything just shutting down and being stuck in your house in a way that makes you kind of bored, and you're using like Zoom and video chat to kind of maintain social connections and coming up with like, I don't know, like dumb games or activities to do with your friends so that you all don't go totally stir crazy. And like, that's really relatable to a certain demographic. But I also think it's like very unrelatable to a lot of people who had like, no, I'm an essential worker, I still went to work every day. Right.
Well, I'm just waiting for the sequel that is, it's basically Saw, but it's a bunch of people playing Jackbox games.
But the host of Jackbox becomes Jigsaw.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. Let's make that crossover happen.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
No, just that it's interesting because I feel like in a few more years looking back, This movie is still gonna, I think, be a good, like, scary movie, but I think it's gonna end up feeling really dated. Whereas I think In the Earth is gonna be a little more, not to make the pun, but a little more evergreen.
Sure. Yeah, I you know, this is, I guess, would be called a found footage movie because it is all first person camera and stuff like that. And they found there is another movie that came out, I think, before this, that uses the same kind of format. It's called Unfriended. Yeah, it came out in 2014.
Oh.
And I don't think it's particularly very good. And at the same time, it might have been a little ahead of its time because this format is so specifically tied to this shared experience everybody was having at the time in a way that it just wouldn't be in 2014. Like I mean, Zoom, the word Zoom has become like the word Google or Kleenex or Band-Aid, where in March or February of 2020, I had never even heard of it as a program.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a lot of that stuff with my job, so it's just not something I ever use. So it never really came across my desk at all. But like, it became so ubiquitous to everybody staying in connection, like you were saying, that it's just I think it taps into something in a way that, you know, the best found footage movies do, where they kind of take the technology of the time and figure out a way to really make it scary and turn it on its head. Because one of the things that I loved about this is that I was thinking about this time is, you know, one of the big complaints everybody has about haunted house movies is like, well, why don't they just leave the house? This movie has a pretty good reason why nobody leaves the house.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's like there's a global pandemic and you're like literally not supposed to. Right.
Yeah. And it also it keeps everybody apart, so nobody can help the other one out. You're just forced to watch as these things happen until Jemma obviously takes the initiative because she lives so close to Haley. But yeah, it just really kind of, the setting is so great for not only just giving you scares in the background and scares in the foreground wherever they feel like putting the scares, but the subtextual and like background elements of a scary movie get kind of like dissected and decompressed a little bit because of the format.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, again, like comparing this to In the Earth. Like In the Earth is a movie about almost like agoraphobia, like being afraid of things being too big.
Sure.
Like being too far out there, having too much space and too much emptiness around you. And this is like Host is like a claustrophobia movie where it's like you are stuck. You're really in these small spaces. Like most of the characters live in apartments. Like they don't have a lot of wiggle room to move around, other than I think like Teddy is the only one who really has like space to roam. Everyone else is kind of trapped in like, there's a bedroom, there's a kitchen that's maybe also the living room, and there's a bathroom and like a hallway, and that's it.
I will say though, most of these girls living alone in London, they had pretty nice places for girls in their like mid-20s. I don't know what they're doing for jobs, but they're very well paid.
One of them's living with her boyfriend. One of them's living with her dad. And who knows? Maybe they're not actually in London. You know, maybe they're in some of the smaller cities that are, or like the suburbs that you just have an apartment.
That's true. I did wonder. I was a little bit bummed that Caroline's dad didn't come back again. I don't know if the ghost got him first or something, but
yeah, that does feel a little bit like a weirdly dangling thing. To just not address that. That is interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, but speaking of the space, this movie actually, you know, it works on a lot of the same techniques that the Innkeepers does. And it's the same kind of stuff. It's the stuff that I love, that I think is very, very effective, which is lots of open doors, lots of deep spaces where it's drawing your eyes into them because you're expecting something to come out at you or to be moving. It creates all of this atmosphere for you to experience and build your own sense of dread in a way that just like a confined singular area doesn't. And they even do the thing that they do in the Innkeepers where they crank the volume up. And so you get like they'll go into the preferences on Zoom and crank the input on their microphones way up. So you get like the hiss of the microphone and it makes you get really quiet because you're listening for any sort of noise that comes through. I think that stuff is really, really effective. Yeah,
and I think going along with that, it's also like you were saying, like you're kind of constantly checking their backgrounds. Like you're waiting for the thing behind them to show up or for something to happen. So by doing this sort of gallery view when they do it with all of the different screens of all the different girls, you're like checking each one, but you're trying to look at all of them at the same time. Right. So you're really not focusing on any of them. So then something's going to happen and you might catch it. Like I caught the legs, but I didn't really get a great look. Yeah. It's a perfect setup to play those kind of games with your mind. Yeah. It really keeps you on edge in a way that these movies, like take a movie like Paranormal Activity where you are locked into a singular shot, just due to the way that that movie is set up. And so you spend all of this long extended time in this singular shot. And so your eyes are kind of like digging into all the shadows of this singular shot and into the deep background and stuff. But with this one, you've got 6 of them going at the same time. And so it keeps you so much more on edge because you're constantly darting around, and they drive you through it very well, where they will cut to a single shot every now and then so you focus in on certain stuff. But yeah, that gallery view is just really effective for keeping you off balance and never quite knowing where the next thing is going to come from. And like you said, you might even miss it. And if you miss it, then you're kind of focusing in on the one that you missed just in time for the next one to happen somewhere else. Yep. And I think also, like you were saying, that the kind of low fidelity quality of the images makes it really interesting in that way too, because when like the shadows and the sort of like color gradients get sort of pixelated and blotchy in that weird way, you're seeing, you're like, wait, is that something moving, or is that just like the bad image quality of this person's webcam? Well, but it keeps you in that weird uncertain like space in your head. And they even play with that within the movie itself, because once they when they start the séance, what's her name? Ceylon? The Ceylon, yeah. Ceylon, the medium is asking Radina, is that her name? I think so. I think it's Radina. Yeah. About a light she sees in the background on her camera, and it turns out just to be a reflection from the candle. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, she points it out, and then you key in on it, and then you start going like, well, I mean, is it just a reflection? What the hell is that? Right. And so not even the people in the movie understand what they're actually seeing, which I think goes a long way as well to kind of like keep you on your toes, but also prepare you for the kind of thing you're in for, as far as what am I looking at? What am I seeing? What am I actually seeing? Yeah. So I think like the way this movie plays with those sort of visual cues and auditory cues is really fun. I also really like the sort of immediate shorthand you get with this group of mostly young women. Like, you don't need a whole hell of a lot of like introduction to any of them. You don't need a ton of background. You can kind of read really quickly, like visually, who they all are. And I think getting to see them in their homes when they've been stuck in their homes is like a huge contributing factor to that, because you can kind of get the vibe of like one of the girls is a little more childish, like she's got like bunny slippers and like patterned pajamas on, and Haley's really serious, and she has this kind of like very like clean and clinical apartment. Like she clearly is like a very type A, like very organized person. And like I liked that you could read so much about each character within the first minute or two of meeting them, based on like visually how they looked and then how they sort of talked and related to one another really quickly. Like these people were obviously like real friends who were supposed to be like really comfortable with one another. So you get like a true read on them very fast.
Yeah, and I also like that within that quick read that you get, you also get a sense of how each one of them is approaching this seance that they're going to be doing, which varies from taking it seriously to not taking it seriously at all to being very hesitant to transdimensional drinking games. Yes. Which I think is great, because it doesn't take long for you to get those things across, and it also feels very honest as far as how people would come to a thing like this. Like I remember, I forget for whose birthday, one of our mutual friends, we did a Zoom escape room.
Yes.
And
yep.
I as it was happening, one of our mutual friends, Dave, was texting me basically just eye rolling emojis as we were working through this whole thing, because he thought it was the dumbest thing he'd ever paid money to do.
So he's the one who let the demon into the friend group.
Yes, it was him.
Yeah, I got it.
But yeah, anytime, especially in a situation like we were all in, you're going out of your comfort zone or doing something you might not immediately think to do just to have something to do. And so, there's going to be a variety of levels of seriousness brought to the occasion.
Yeah, especially when you're doing something like a seance, which already, like, it really depends on your personal stance on those kinds of things. Like, how credulous are you towards, like, spiritualist sort of leaning things? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you think it's all bullshit? Are you somewhere in between? Like, when you add that in and then also make it like a Friday night online entertainment when you've been cooped up in your house for 6 months, like it kind of ratchets it up to a different level.
Yeah, and I think what ends up happening too is, Jemma creates this fake story about this boy she went to school with named Jack who hanged himself, and she doesn't even. I mean, she does do it to kind of take the piss a little bit, but at the same time, she's really doing it, she says, because nothing happened. And like it's almost like she felt the need to fill the space with something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Where it's that sort of like awkward, like no one really knows what to say, and everything's just kind of like dragging, and you're all sitting there staring at the screen, like, well, what have you been up to?
Right.
Oh, nothing, because we can't do anything because it's COVID. Cool, me too.
Yeah. Like I feel like I would feel the same way if someone was like, what if we all did like a group Zoom meditation thing? And then I'd be sitting there while this person is trying to very seriously talk us through a meditation. I'd just be like, what the fuck are we doing?
Well, I remember, like it was recent enough, a year and a half ago, that we were actually doing these kinds of things with our friends.
Yeah.
And I remember like, it would be somebody's birthday, or somebody would be like, oh, are people going to be around Friday night? Who wants to like jump on a Zoom? And you would. And sometimes there was just like nothing to say. And it would get really like,
right.
Okay. All right. Good to see you, I guess. And so, yeah, like I do understand that kind of reaction where it's just like, this is getting too uncomfortable and I have to like do or say something. We need to make something happen.
It's so strange, isn't it? Because I mean, like, we've all known, our mutual friend group has known each other for 20 years, depending on who you're talking to. And I don't think we've ever been at a loss for something to talk about in person. But then, you would jump onto Zoom and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, kids are good.
Well, and I think part of it's like during the lockdowns, like no one was doing anything. So there was nothing to like, even if you hadn't talked in like 3 weeks, there was nothing to catch up on.
Yeah, that's true.
So there was no like, oh, I went and I saw this movie. It was really cool. Or like, I visited my friend in Portland and it was awesome. And we went here and then I did this. Like, nobody had any of those just like anecdotal day-to-day things to talk about. And so, yeah, you ended up with that sort of like stilted, like everyone trying a little too hard. Everybody... Like that's very relatable in this movie when you see like as everybody's getting on to the Zoom call, there's moments where it's sort of like somebody will get on and it's like, oh, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I thought our group online movie watching thread thing that we were doing was like a godsend, because at least it gave us something to talk about.
Yes, some sort of external focus that wasn't just like, I don't know, brooding on the state of the world at the time.
Right, yeah.
Which is another interesting thing in this movie where it's kind of like you can see really early on the cracks in this group of friends. Like, is it Radina who has like the shitty boyfriend who?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like she's kind of arguing with like the boyfriend's like really loudly and aggressively and like pointedly chopping vegetables in the background. And she gets in an argument with him about it, and as she's off camera and like off mic, all the other girls are kind of going like, this is why you shouldn't have moved in together during the pandemic. Like, you don't know somebody that well, and then you're stuck living with them, and da-da-da. And then Teddy, who's on at the very beginning and then back on at the very end, has a girlfriend that nobody likes. And like Jemma and Haley clearly have some sort of tension going on, like maybe just butting heads personality wise, but like...
And it seems like Caroline might have a thing for Teddy. Because when they say Teddy's going to be there, she's like, oh, nobody told me. I got all this shit on my face. So it seems like she might have a crush on Teddy or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting because it definitely seems like the distance has kind of the distance, and probably like you could argue they didn't have to highlight it, but the general stress of like living through a pandemic in a really uncertain period kind of enhances those like cracks and problems that are already there and makes them more ready to sort of crumble apart under stress, which this movie definitely provides some stress.
Yes. Well, it's funny. One of the things Caitlin said in the scene where the boyfriend was chopping, vegetables or whatever, and then he leaves the room, and she said, "Oh yeah, he's going to stay in the bedroom while we do this." Caitlin said, "Why doesn't she go into the bedroom? He's making dinner."
Yeah,
but she's got a pretty good point.
Yep. That's a good argument. Like, maybe he's not a shitty boyfriend. Maybe she's a shitty girlfriend.
Yeah, it's very possible.
But yeah, there's a lot in this movie that I really liked, and I don't know if you want to like, if you have specific points you want to hit, but I definitely want to get into how well this uses like the trappings of Zoom and similar technologies to scare the shit out of people.
Please do.
Like, I loved the filters.
Yes.
Like that was such a good gag. That was so good.
Yeah, the filter is really good. The background, I think, is probably the most inspired bit in the movie, I think. When they have Caroline's looped video background, and it says a certain point she has left the room, and then this looped video comes back, and they think it's her for a second, and then they just let you sit in watching this loop, and then in that way that you do when you break the plane of your digital background, she just comes smashing in and starts smashing her face, and it's so good. It's so creepy.
It's so great because not only do you have this, like you said, this moment where you're not sure, like, is it the loop? Is it her? When she's smashing or getting her head smashed on the keyboard, you can see like gobbledygook messages popping up from her in the chat.
I didn't even notice that. That was a really. Thank you for pointing that out, because
it was such a great detail.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the other thing that's great about this movie is, like, there's so much stuff to find. Like, I don't know if I did it the same night. I might have watched it twice in the same night, because I think I watched it and then I needed to know more. It's definitely not that I was too afraid to go to sleep. And so I looked up about a bunch of stuff about it in a couple interviews with the director, and then I think either the same night, probably the next day, in the safety of the afternoon sun, I went back and I watched most of it again to try and pick out some of the things that I hadn't seen before. And there's just so much stuff. It's very, very dense with stuff to see and find.
Yeah, and they're not like hidden from you. There's just so much that you could be paying attention to. So yeah, I love that detail where it's just like you can see, like in a real Zoom, when somebody sends a message, it says the name and then the start of what they've typed. Mm-hmm. And for her, every time she hits her head, it pops up and no one clicks on the chat at any point. So you see that there's like 13 messages or whatever there, which means that her head has been slammed against the keyboard at least 13 times.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I never noticed that. That's awesome.
And it's well done because she's kind of glitching in and out of the virtual background. So you see her, but you only fully see her a little bit. And it was great to me the way that this movie, it gives you plenty of violence without giving you a lot of gore.
Right. Sure.
Like, it doesn't need to get, like, people get bloody and it's clear people are getting injured or killed. But, like, it's not a super gory, gross out movie, but it's still really scary.
Yeah, I mean, when Radina gets killed, I don't even know what happens to her, but it just, all of a sudden, there's this big drop, a big thud, and her camera's now looking up, and there's a single drop of blood on the lens. Mm-hmm. And that's more than enough to get across what they're trying to go for. You know, you don't have to have blood coming down the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I also like the sticking with the Zoom stuff. The whole thing takes place within the free Zoom trial. The 40 minutes, the 40 minutes or an hour Zoom free trial time constraint,
which was such a, like, that I think of all things really brought me back to that, like, period of time. Because, so, like, for school, I'd used Zoom for a couple years now. So, like, I was fairly comfortable with Zoom when the pandemic happened. I used it for, like, classes sometimes and, like, one-on-one meetings with my professors and things like that, because it was just easier. But I always have had an account through school or work. So I've always had a paid account. So, like, I remember early on in the pandemic lockdowns when other people were getting on Zoom to, like, do these sort of social events, and people would be like, oh, well, you know, I'll host, but that means, like, if we're starting at 9, we're done by 9:45, it's going to be over. And I was like, wait, what? Why?
Well, you know, it's because of the free trial. It has nothing to do with the fact that we just want to get out of here in less than an hour.
Yeah, we just have nothing to talk about after the first 25 minutes. So.
Right.
But yeah, that was a very, like, nostalgic, like, that gave me that feeling of, like, really being back in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I also, I probably used Zoom before this, but I really liked the credits at the end.
Yes.
Just scrolling through the Zoom contacts. I thought that was very clever.
Yep.
Yeah, the one of the other things that was oddly effective, even though it's a dumb little detail, is when the each person would disconnect, it would switch to that still photograph, which was usually of them at a much happier time. And so you get you go from the still frozen video of Teddy burning alive to like his smiling face, and then that's gone. And then you go from the loop in Caroline's room to like her smiling face, and then that's gone. You go from the shot of Radina's blood-soaked camera to a still. I thought it was really effective.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like it was creepy because it's so familiar at this point. Yeah. Like it's so effective because I think at this, like, for so many of us that's just like unremarkable at this point. And so I like that. It's just an eerie juxtaposition too of like they were so happy and this is like, oh, it's just normal and signing off, and it's like, no, there's definitely a dead burning corpse over there.
There is something built into the whole concept too, isn't there? Where it's like, it's a found footage film, but it sets itself apart in that the person holding the camera can see behind them. Mm-hmm. Whereas usually you can only see what's in front of you. And I think that creates a whole different level of tension when you can see what's happening behind you, but also everybody else can see it too. Yeah. And so and they use so many other trappings of the found footage style really well. Like when Caroline takes out the selfie stick so she doesn't have to go into the attic.
I thought that was so brilliant.
Yeah, that's really good.
So, like, that whole... And I think that's the interesting thing that this movie does, is it takes so many things that feel like very basic kind of haunted house, like Amityville Horror, The Conjuring style stuff, but puts this twist on it with the zoom conceit. And I thought using the selfie stick was just brilliant because it's like, yeah, you want to know what's making the noise up there, but you don't want to go up there. So put your phone on an extendable stick. Just like stick it up there and have everybody else tell you what they see.
Right.
And so smart.
And since she is not actively looking, she's just mindlessly spinning it. It makes perfect sense that you would pass by something and just keep going, like she does when you see those gross legs that are just hanging there. So because it kind of takes it away from takes the agency away a little for a second, where you can't they can't get her to stop because she didn't see what was happening and stuff like that. It's a great addition. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you sort of drew the comparison to the Innkeepers, because the two things I was thinking about as I was watching this was the Blair Witch. Yep. And the Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Oh, interesting.
Just because elaborate. There is that sort of like malevolent supernatural presence in a very enclosed area with your characters who cannot escape it. Okay. So, I don't know. I don't know if that one's a little bit of a stretch, but the Blair Witch, like the heritage from the Blair Witch was so clear.
Yes.
For me.
Yeah, there's actually I saw an interview with the director, or maybe it was just on Twitter or something. I mean, that's what Twitter is now. When I see an interview, it means I read a Twitter thread. Where he was mentioning that there's a lot of stuff that they do that is direct callbacks to other previous found footage movies. I think a lot of the up close stuff with Emma when she's crying underneath the blanket, snotting out of her nose, is very clearly Blair Witch. The flower on the floor with the footsteps through the flower, I think, is from Paranormal Activity. And I think one of the shots of the monster, I think it's the attic shot, I think is from Wreck, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I can see that. Did Wreck also have a sequence where they were using the camera flash?
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, I can't remember if it was that. I feel like someone has done that before, and it's really effective. It's really good, especially when she's looking. Another great use of the technology and everything is when she's looking down the hallway and she can see something, but they can't see it through the video.
Yep.
And so she takes the camera, the Polaroid camera, and takes a Polaroid. And develops it out, and it's like a dude hanging. It's really good, and also it's. I love it when not all technology is what's the word I'm looking for? Sensitive to ghosts. Let's put it that way. Like I think the fact that an analog piece of equipment can pick this thing up, but a digital piece of equipment can't, I really love.
I liked that too, and I liked the fact that because when she first pulled the camera out, when they were first like setting up the séance and all of that, and was like, I'm going to take a picture, everybody say cheese or something. I was like, what, has this lady never heard of screenshots?
I know, right?
What are we doing here? And then the fact that the presence of the camera was like actually like really important for the rest of the movie was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like this is a thing. This is like an item we needed in to be involved in this plot.
Yeah. So how did you feel about later in the movie? Excuse me. When it does become a lot more explicitly first-person camera stuff, when people start walking around, did you find it distracting at all? Because they go from this zoom setup where it's, the camera's facing them to they start walking around their houses, and most of them end up having the camera turned away from them. And the one that really stood out to me, but I think there's an in-movie explanation for it, was at the end when Jemma comes to Haley's house. And at that point, it just explicitly turns into handheld camera type stuff.
Yeah.
And what occurred to me, though, I was like, oh, well, all the lights are out. And so I think she's using the screen light as like a flashlight. And so that kind of clears that for me a little bit more. Or maybe she's actually just using the flashlight on the phone, but the camera's still going. I'm not told, but I can track that one a little bit more, I think, when I think about it.
Yeah, I think logistically it doesn't bother me so much because like you can just have it. You can be like on a Zoom on your phone and do the like flip your screen like the same way when you're on your camera, you want to like take a selfie or then you want to take a picture. So like that didn't bother me in terms of like the mechanics of it. What bothered me more was sort of the like, you then don't get to see the actor in this scene. And like it's great for some of those like Haley slowly walking through her apartment, like going down the hallway because she heard something. Like it's great for those tension moments where it's like quiet and all the other people are there and they're also kind of holding their breath and like, oh my God, what is it? What's happening? But yeah, later on it kind of becomes a little like depersonalizing. Like you don't, not that I'm like super like chomping at the bit to like, yeah, I want to see all these people murdered. Let me look at their faces while they die. But like, it does lessen the impact of it when everything's facing away from them in those climactic moments.
Yeah, I would argue that I think what they're trying to do, especially at the end there, is they need to pull you in to the moment as much as possible. Yeah. And so I think turning it around to making it a first person from the viewer's point of view is probably the best way to do that, because then you can really get into those crevices or those doors that are open just a crack and she's pushing them open, and you have no control over whether or not she goes into those rooms, but you're also right there. You're the first line of defense or whatever happens to be in there. And I think as they push into the climax, I think they need you to be in there as much as possible.
Definitely. And I also think like it does kind of in those moments become more of a traditional found footage movie. And I think It's because, like, for the reasons you just described, that's what makes found footage style work.
Yeah.
Is that it makes you feel like you're actually there and you're moving through the space with the characters, and that you are, like, that first line of defense for anything that you encounter, and that's what makes them so effective.
Well, it's like I've said multiple times on the show.
Uh-oh.
No, it's not controversial or anything. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. But I don't think the number one thing that I hate in most scary movies is when someone is going into a room and they immediately change the camera angle to be inside the room as the person comes into the room. Because there's nothing scary about that, because you, the person who is viewing the movie, are already in the room. And so,
Right.
You can get like a nice backlit shot of someone coming into a dark room, but there's nothing scary about it, because
We already know who that is.
Right, and the scariness of going into this room is going into the room. So if you switch the point of view so you are already in the room, then what are we even doing here? There's
Yeah, because then you're the scary thing in the room.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I've said, like I still think one of the scariest. Well, it's he's done it to me twice. David Lynch is a master at this. Like the scare. One of the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life is that Denny's sequence from Mulholland Drive.
Oh yeah.
Where, like, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, because it
I wrote a
scared the
whole
shit
paper
out of
on
you.
that scene.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, please send that to me. I really want to read that.
Oh God, I'll have to find it. It was back in undergrad. I have no idea.
Legitimately, the first time I saw that movie, I was obsessed with that movie.
Yeah.
Mostly because of that single scene, because it was just so terrifying. And it's the thing where you're going to this, pushing into this unknown area with an obstruction in front of you, and then the thing comes at you. You don't see the thing from the thing's point of view. And the other one is in Twin Peaks, when what is it? I can't remember if it's the show or if it's Fire Walk with Me, where someone is going into Laura's bedroom. I think the mother's going into Laura's bedroom, and you see her, from her point of view, slowly push the door open, and then it just reveals Bob at the foot of her bed. It's fucking terrifying.
Yep.
And if you have a shot inside the room of her opening that door, it diffuses that entire tension.
Well, yeah, because it's sort of like it's a different priority in those shots. Like, the priority that is, like, rather than making you scared, we're gonna show you the face of somebody else getting scared.
Right.
Like, that's, and it puts you, the audience, at like a level of remove again. And so yeah, it's not. I agree. I don't think it's as effective to do it that way.
Yeah, I've never found very rarely have I found when they try to do the person is going to see the thing first, you're going to see their reaction, and then you see it. I almost never find that as scary as if you are right there with them seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. It feels like an old school kind of like film trick, like, like B movies back in the day where there'd be like the damsel in distress, and they're like, you see it, you see the monster, and you're horrified,
right.
you scream, like that kind of thing. Like, because we can't show it because it's, not in the budget to have the monster on set right now.
Well, it's this is going to sound silly, but it's almost like a literary approach, because like 90%, well, obviously 100% because it's written, but H.P. Lovecraft stories, his monsters are very rarely like specifically defined with imagery.
They're barely described.
Yeah, they're described more through what seeing them does to the people who see them. Where it's more about how this person was driven insane by the absolute indescribable horror that they just witnessed. And in that sense, it works there. But I think because your imagination is kind of filling in the gaps for you. But in a movie, it just doesn't work for me in a movie. Like the only time it's ever come close to working is when they tried to do literally the Lovecraft thing in The Mouth of Madness, where they have Sam Neill looking into the abyss while the girl is reading from the book. So she's reading the Lovecraftian description, and all you're seeing is Sam Neill's face reacting to what she's reading, like to what he's seeing. It kind of works there, but generally it doesn't work.
Well, I think the reason it kind of works in situations like that is because they're doing it for a reason.
Right.
Like it's a choice, not just like, oh, this is the default, this is the style of how you shoot a scary movie, quote unquote. Which is, I think, what happens too often now, where it's just like, no, now the camera angle switches to here because that's just what you do.
And I know I mentioned this when we covered the movie, but I'm convinced 50% of the reason why that weird dog suit guy in The Shining is as scary as it is because the angle you see that guy is as if you are walking down the hall and stumble upon whatever's going on in that room.
Yeah.
They don't shoot it from the inside of the room.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they shot it from the dog suit man's point of view, it would be much less scary. It would just be like Wendy looking in a doorway, looking horrified.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but on the there's a horror movie from 1960 called City of the Dead with Christopher Lee, which I love is one of my favorite older horror movies, and I think we'll probably do it eventually on the show. But the DVD actually has him doing commentary, and the commentary is awesome because it's him just like it's him talking about the movie, but it's like more so him musing about his thoughts about horror and like what works and what doesn't and stuff like that. And he said in this commentary, the scariest thing on earth is an open door. And I was like, yeah, he's right. He's pretty much right.
Yeah, he seems like a man who would know what he was talking about when it came to scary shit.
Yeah. That guy, man. Somebody should make a movie about his life because it's unbelievable. He was in the SAS.
Would watch the shit out of that.
He was a Nazi hunter, basically, and he worked for the British Special Forces. And then after that, he was Dracula.
The coolest man to ever live.
Yes. I feel like so many of those guys have those kind of lives, though, where it's like,
oh, yeah.
You know, Ted Williams, greatest baseball hitter in the history of the world or whatever, goes off and becomes like a jet fighter for 3 years in the Second World War.
Yeah.
Jack Kirby created Captain America. Then he went to fight the Nazis and came back, and he just casually created the Marvel Universe. Yeah,
and it wasn't like Johnny Cash was also like, he did something cool, and like even like Julia Childs was like a code breaker or something.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's like all these people. Man.
You know who did nothing cool during the Second World War?
Who?
John Wayne, because he's a fucking coward. That's why. He specifically got out of military service in World War II because he thought he convinced the army that he would be of more use to the war effort back home making movies about the war. I'm not making that up.
Well, in that case, he was probably right.
Yeah, but, you know, he could have been killed in the war, which would have really made my life better. But that's
wow.
Very mean. I know that's
Clay
mean.
Is coming out strong against John Wayne.
No, that's a running thread through all of our shows is how much I hate John Wayne. So.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I'm in on this information now. Now I know how to torment
he was
you.
A trash person. Anyway, so one of the other things I wanted to mention is the monster itself. Who is not doesn't have a name, but let's call him Jack for ease sake.
Yeah, for simplicity.
Really kind of cool. I don't think I really picked up on the first time I watched this. I don't think I really picked up on exactly what they were doing with this creature, this demon, but it's actually really cool. It's this idea where because Jemma, during this attempt to reach people on the other side, because she creates a fake persona in this Jack person, she's essentially created an empty vessel that anything could inhabit and then become this thing, which is really cool.
Yeah, I you know what? I think that's kind of the part that reminded me of Autopsy of Jane Doe, because in Jane Doe, you're sort of like, you go through periods in that movie where you're like, oh, well, this poor young woman, she must have been persecuted and like wrongly persecuted as a witch. But then whatever malevolent spirit is actually inside of her just continues killing. And it's not actually a revenge thing. It's not like, oh, it's a corrupted human soul in there. It's like, no, it's something else, and she just became an avatar or like vessel for it. And I think that's kind of where my brain was drawing the connection to this movie.
Sure.
Where it's that similar concept, like you were saying, where they've made a, like, what do they say in the movie, that it's like you made a mask and anything can put it on.
Yes, yeah. Once again.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Once again, Billy Joel's Stranger makes an appearance.
I was 100% convinced you were just gonna, like, for no reason, start insulting John Wayne again.
Oh, I could go on for a long time if I really wanted to.
Next podcast, next episode.
He made a movie where he played Genghis Khan, and you know what happened when he made that movie? He got fucking cancer and he died.
Oh my god.
Serves him right. It's true. Like, pretty much everybody who worked in that movie ended up getting cancer and dying because they shot it in Russia, like in basically a radioactive part of Russia.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Fuck.
Billy Joel's Stranger, great song.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of, it reminds me, now that you've explained it the way you have, it reminds me a little bit of The Evil Dead, and what is so scary about The Evil Dead, at least the first one anyway, is that the monster, the demons, they don't have any agenda other than to just kill everybody. and harass and just get rid of everyone. And that's
just be demons.
Right, which is refreshing, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, where it's like it's like some of these other movies, they fall into the trap of like over explaining their monster, the evil, like, it's like we have to get real nitpicky and we got to get real like down into the minutia of like, why does this evil spirit want to harm me though?
How is this connected to my own personal trauma?
Yeah, kind of. And in this one, it's just like, nope, there are demons or evil spirits or whatever you want to call them, and they just want to do bad things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the look of this creature, like the glimpses you get of it, is pretty good.
Yeah, he almost looks like he's like charred or something. It's a very like charcoaly kind of like black burnt kind of look, which is a little surprising, I guess, based on the fact that I guess he's supposed to be like I don't really know what he's supposed to be, but I wasn't expecting that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but I like it where it's like the very like you said, like the charcoal kind of skin and the like almost like completely white eyes, right?
Yeah. And I think it works very well for what they're doing and also specifically how little money I'm going to assume that they had to do this, because everything is so dark and you only get these quick glimpses of things. Yeah, if you just rub a bunch of charcoal over your buddy's face and then have him make a scary monster face for half a second, it's going to look terrifying.
Yeah, and I think that works not only budget-wise, but again, like keeping it simple, not having something like super elaborate. And if you're only going to kind of do these like glimpses and these sort of like jarring like shots, but not like any sustained viewing, then you can get away with that. You're not giving your audience a chance to like sit there and stare at it and kind of nitpick like what's makeup and what's been like digitally enhanced.
Right. How did you feel about the final jump scare at the end? Because Paranormal Activity famously has a final jump scare that was much what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't controversial, but it wasn't there originally, and then apparently Steven Spielberg saw the movie and he's like, you know what you need? You need a monster shot at the end. And it's not great. It seems kind of cheap. And, you know, the final monster face into the camera thing I feel like a lot of times comes off as like a cheesy final attempt to scare people. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth. Like, I almost think there would have been something kind of great if they had just, because at the very end, it's Haley and Jemma together walking down the hallway back into Haley's living room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Haley's using the camera flash, and I think Gemma's holding the phone or whatever they're still kind of streaming on. I kind of wonder how it would have been if they had just gotten closer and closer and then the call had just ended.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know if that would have felt like maybe leaving it a little too loose or like not doing enough at the very end there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, I don't know. I think I maybe would have liked it. I'm kind of torn.
Yeah, I generally don't love that last kind of jump scare thing. However,
Yeah.
I think they earn it pretty well.
Yeah.
Not only because they set it up in the way that they handle their monster up to this point,
Mm-hmm.
but that last bit where it's just camera flash, camera flash, camera
Yeah.
flash. It's like you got to do something. You know it's coming. You know,
Right, they're building up to it intentionally,
Right,
which
right.
which feels more like a choice than just like, oh, and now we put in the last jump scare of the monster face. Like it seems like they wanted to lead up to that.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about the final shots of found footage movie Past, where you've got the most famous one is the Blair Witch, where
Yep.
it's just the camera falls and you see the person standing in the corner, which I think is very effective. It's
Oh, it's so good.
I'll be honest, I think the Blair Witch is probably on our list. That'll be an interesting rewatch because I watched that movie for the first time well after it had become a phenomenon. And
Oh, really?
so it didn't really, I don't know, I didn't really like it, but I did like that last scene. I thought the last scene was really good.
I will be excited to talk about the Blair Witch.
Yeah.
I will hold it for that episode, but I will be excited to talk about it.
I honestly am excited to talk about it because I've only seen it the one time, so it'll be interesting to go back, 25 years later and try it out again. But yeah, then you've got Paranormal Activity that does do the jump scare thing, and it doesn't really work and kind of ruins some of the what's nice about the rest
Yeah.
of the movie. And this one kind of is somewhere in the middle where it's like they figured out how to blend both of those styles, and I think they make it work pretty well.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. I would be curious to see how the ending hit if they hadn't done that, but I'm also not like, oh, what a cop out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will say that the other person in the room with me while I was watching this time may or may not have screamed very loudly when it happened. So mission accomplished, I guess.
I was gonna say, which always like if that happens, then you're like, well, I mean, clearly they made the right choice.
Right. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we round it out on host?
I don't think so. I think I'm kind of I think one of the most impressive things about this movie, just to sort of round it out, is not only the way it plays with technology around like the sort of more stereotypical like haunted house spooky like tropes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also still just kind of impressed with how realistic these friends felt.
Yeah.
You know, like they felt like a believable, like, oh, all these people probably went to college together and they've been out of college for a while. And now that they're not able to like go out and meet up for drinks, their friendships are getting kind of like weird and distant and maybe a little awkward at times. Like people are maybe starting to outgrow one another. And it felt very believable in a way to me that I think made me more like comfortable with all of them, but like therefore more invested in all of them, which obviously makes the scares more effective. So I was pleasantly surprised because I had really low expectations for the acting in this movie.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, I think the acting is great. I think, like you're saying, I think they're all very believable, and they must be friends in real life, because I don't know if you can fake the level of comfort that they all have with each other.
Yeah, and when I say that I had low expectations for the acting, I think it was more I was kind of ready, because I knew that the central conceit of this movie, and I was sort of ready for it to kind of ride on that. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of rely on its gimmick to get it through. I was pleasantly surprised that like the people felt realistic to me too, and like the way they talked to one another felt like the way real people talk. It didn't feel like scripted or stilted in any weird way.
Yeah, apparently they had a excuse me. They had a script, but it was more a film treatment as the basis for their performance rather than a fully worked up script, and they used improvisation and live feedback from the director during their takes. And sometimes it says excuse me. Rob would be typing on Zoom while we're in the middle of a scene, telling us what to say. It was like live scripting, or he'd private message me, is what Jemma was saying about it.
Wow.
They were only given details. They were given the details only of their own parts, with the fates of the other characters being withheld from them. The director and the writer mentioned several influences on the film, including Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, Lake Mungo, which I haven't seen, but I've heard is very good.
Oh, I don't know that one.
And I think it might be on the list. I'm not totally sure. And Ghost Watch. Have you ever seen Ghost Watch?
Oh, God.
Ghost Watch is really cool.
I'll have to look, because that name is so familiar, but I don't know.
It's a British fake reality, like pseudo documentary thing from 1992, where it's supposed to be a BBC news broadcast on Halloween of what the fuck is it? They are investigating a haunted family, essentially, and obviously things start to get more ghostly as it goes on. It's really good. It works. It doesn't work quite as well in the streaming era, because you're watching it on a giant TV and you can kind of see the strings a little bit more. But if you can find it, it's worth a watch. It was on Shudder for a while. I think if you really want to find it, if you go to archive.org, you might be able to find it there, because I think that's where I found it the last time I watched it. So,
okay.
You didn't hear that from me. Except that you did. But yeah, Ghost Watch is cool. It's worth a watch. But yeah, it seems like there's more improv, and so that casualness between them is clearly real.
Yeah, I liked that. I thought that was a good choice.
What do you think about the placement on this list? It's number 34, which is very high.
Yeah.
Do you think it belongs on the list?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think it does too.
Yeah. Strong yes to that. Like, I was pleasantly surprised, like I said, by how good the acting is. I found it legitimately scary.
Yeah.
At several points, and like brutally efficient about it too, which is interesting, because like you could argue the first like 20 minutes of this 55-minute movie are pretty slow.
Yeah, they like, take their time. Like I actually do think, though, that the pacing of this movie is very good. I think they have like perfect control over everything that's happening, and they pace it out very well.
Yes, it builds tension in a really great way. They play with the technology and sort of, like we said, like the filters and the backgrounds, and they do it in a way that feels like true to life. Like it's not overdone. They're not like hammering you over the head with it all the time, but they are using it the way that, like, yeah, your one friend who's like going to be on the Zoom call, who's going to be like goofing around with filters. Like, so I feel like this movie has a lot to recommend it. 34 still feels really high to me.
It does, yeah.
Like, if you told me this was like 55 or 75, I'd be like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like it should be somewhere in there. I mean, if we're going by our what's the word I'm looking for? Our measuring stick here. The Shining is number 77.
Oh, well, that's better than it was, I feel like, the last time we looked.
Yeah, it's gone on quite a ride. It went from 101 to 113 to 111 to 112 and then up to 77.
Yeah, I mean, I still think of, The Shining just in terms of the longevity and the impact it's had on the genre and the sort of timelessness of it. Like, when I think of all of those things and then I think of this movie, I'm like, this movie's really scary. I could definitely see it kind of triggering a lot of copycats the way something like Blair Witch did.
Mm-hmm.
But do I think that it's up to the Shining level? Maybe not quite.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd swap them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. I think the thing that's gonna be interesting to follow with this movie is how much longevity it does have, because on the one hand, I think it absolutely belongs on the list because I think it is a once in a lifetime movie.
Yeah.
Because the conditions and the content and the framing device is so specific to that time and the time period that we were and are in. Somebody got there, somebody did it, and they knocked it out of the park. And I don't know if you really can do it again because that was such a singular moment in time.
Yeah.
So for that element, I do think it belongs on the list because it is a found footage movie, but they found a new way to do it that was so relatable to the moment that it came out. However, on the other side, what does this movie look like in 20 years? Does it still work?
I was just going to say, it almost reminds me of Scream in the sense of, like, Scream worked so well when the first Scream movie came out because people didn't really have cell phones. Like,
right.
Maybe you did, but it was like, I only have X amount of minutes on my phone, and like nobody texted. Could you imagine if that was in the first Scream? If Ghostface was like, "We actually have to make this quick because I've only got 10 minutes left on my prepaid cell phone. So if you could quickly answer my question so I can kill you, that would be great." Right, but like that's what I mean. Like the landline had to be a primary form of communication that everybody had and understood and used commonly in their everyday for that movie to work the way it did. And I think that's why this movie works so well, is that like so many of us have become just so accustomed to Zoom in the last 2 years. But yeah, in you say, like, what is this going to look like in 20 years? What is it going to look like in 5?
True. Yeah.
Who knows? 5 years before this, we did not think we would ever be like regularly using video conferencing for like meetings and friend hangouts and doctor's appointments and all sorts of shit. So like
5 years before this, 5 years before this was when Unfriended came out, which is the same or very similar kind of conceit as far as the video call structure. And I don't think anybody saw it.
Right. And 5 years from now, we could all be in the metaverse permanently.
Right.
So yeah, I agree that I feel like this should be on the list because I do think it's a good quality scary movie. I don't know if it should be in the top, like, 50.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. I'm actually, on the other hand, I am very much looking forward to what the director does next. He's got a movie coming out, I think this year, called Dash Cam, which seems to be another. It's not. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself as to it's a movie from the point of view of a dash cam, but.
I thought you were going to say from the point of view of a car.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're not wrong.
No, that's on the Patreon where we cover Christine.
Right.
And the writer, Jed Shepard, he did a crowdfunding for this thing called Ghosts, which I think I backed. I'm not even totally sure if I know exactly what it is. But it's some sort of like it's a video game that is a horror video game that I think has like very specific parameters to like when you can play it. But when you do play it, there's a whole multitude of different possibilities of things you can do, like as far as the story goes. And it has a few of the girls from Host in it. It's got Radina and Haley and Jemma are all in it, and apparently Tori Spelling. So that's fun.
Oh,
but yeah, either way, looking forward to what these guys do next. Be very interesting to see where they go.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna do it for Host. I hit the randomizer button, but I think next time we are going to put out our coverage of the 1958 version of The Fly, which we did with Wes for Patreon last year, I believe. Just to give us a little bit of breathing room here. And as I get back...
need as you recuperate from COVID.
Exactly. But I did hit the randomizer. Beep, boop, 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 boop. And after that, so after we do The Fly, we'll be doing number 127, which is 2019's Crawl, which is a... alligator or crocodile, I can't remember which one. It's an alligator movie, which I saw in the theater and I fucking loved. So I'm looking forward to watching that again.
Awesome. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Excellent. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you'd like to help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-file and sign up for our Patreon, where you can listen to Amanda and I cover the second string of Stephen King this year. We're doing the Stephen King movies that are not the ones that get all the awards and all the accolades. the second stringers like The Dark Half and Needful Things. And this month we'll be doing Christine, which I'm very excited about because I've never actually seen before. And it also has our entire coverage of the Friday the 13th series on there, as well as all sorts of other podcasts from years back that we've done. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda, for joining me.
Thank you, Clay.
And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.